So I'm going to introduce our panellists, and as I introduce them, could they please make their way up on the stage? I'm going to start with Brett McFadgen, who is the Chief Operating Officer at PLS. Brett is a skilled metallurgist and mining operations leader with extensive experience across multiple commodities, including gold, nickel, copper and lithium. He joined PLS in 2023 as the General Manager Operations and was appointed Executive General Manager in 2024. He has oversight of the mine and processing plants, including performance, maintenance, safety and quality. So pretty much everything. Prior to joining PLS, Brett held roles with Newcrest Mining, Mineral Resources, OMG, coarse nickel operations, as well as being part of the Newmont and Barrick joint venture at KCGM. Welcome, Brett. Next, we have Darren Kwok, and Darren is the Head of Mining Electrification and Technology at Perenti Contract Mining. In his role, Darren oversees all operational technology and electrification activities for the 4 contract mining businesses in the Perenti Contract Mining Group: Barminco, African Underground Mining Services, African Mining Services, as well as Orology. The Perenti Group, as many of you will know, has become one of the largest diversified global contracting mining services companies to offer both surface and underground mining solutions at scale. And since he joined Barminco in 2016 as the Innovation Technology Lead, he's brought his passion and leadership to the larger Perenti Group, and his remit now includes over 20 global mining projects, employing 7,000 employees, covering both underground and surface operations. Thanks for joining us, Darren. In addition, his team is implementing a large number of projects to realise Perenti's vision of the mine of the future. These projects drive specific efficiency, productivity and safety outcomes to deliver enduring value and certainty for the mining clients. And Darren has over 20 years' experience in developing and implementing technology strategies in automotive and mining industries. Really useful. And please welcome Tara Bennett, who is the Product Manager for Digital Solutions at APAC Continental. And as you would know, APAC, she works for ContiTech, which is a group sector of Continental based in Perth, and her background spans 30 years, beginning as a field geologist. She transitioned from working in mine sites to mastering data analytics, ultimately leading to her expertise in digital product management. Tara's a rare blend of mining product expertise, digital transformation and product management, and she is at the forefront of integrating AI and machine learning to shift through petabytes of data, turning this vast information into actionable insights that drive down costs, minimise workforce variability and enhance productivity. Thanks, Tara. And last but not least, we've got Cristian Lopez, who is the Manager of Transformation at Glencore. He is a value-focused leader with a proven track record in the mining and technology industries, passionate about harnessing data and guiding strategic business transformation. At Glencore, Cristian promotes AI solutions, reinforces synergies between the business and IT, and drives technology automation and organisational ambidexterity. I was just really pleased with myself I could get that word out correctly. His strategic approach includes optimising AI deployment, prioritising OT and OT convergence, and implementing change management to capture value across the chain. Leveraging his engineering and computer science background, he leads successful digital strategies, asset modernisation projects, and innovation software solutions, enhancing value creation, operational efficiency across lots of disciplines, and really ultimately to boost Glencore's global competitiveness. So I hope you agree with me that we have the right people on the stage and on this panel to have this discussion today. And we've got a number of themes that we agreed that we wanted to traverse with you, but I also want to allow for some questions at the end. So please engage with questions. I'll start by getting our panellists warmed up with some of questions, but please shoot your hand up and we'll see if we can get to you. So let's get started, and I really wanted to put this question to all of you, and I might start with you, Brett, because you've been sitting here the longest, but I'm going to ask the same question of all the panellists, which is, you know, where your organisation is at, Tara obviously works for an organisation that's helping other organisations, but where is your organisation at in the journey of automation?
Yeah, thanks, Tara. It's a pleasure to be here, but let's be honest. If you visit our Gangora site today, you wouldn't see any autonomous haul trucks at all, and I like to think that's deliberate. We're what I'd call strategically patient, where most automation solutions target the larger size fleets, consistent haulage routes, large pit design. That's not us. We run the small 150-ton fleet with multiple cutbacks and different destinations. We're also 3/4 of the way through our owner-operator cycle, and until recently we didn't even have a fibre connection to site. So, we weren't quite ready, and we're still not quite ready. So where are we? We're on the launching pad. We're waiting for the right moment, and when it makes commercial sense, we'll launch into it.
Great. Hopefully we can spark some ideas as well. I think, did I hear a gasp, but no fibre to the operation, so we might have to delve into that in a little bit. Same question for you, Darren.
So first of all, thank you for the opportunity, and amazing panellists today. But I guess as a contractor, we have a slightly nuanced view on what automation actually means for us, remembering that we sort of operate on multiple different client sites and multiple jurisdictions, both surface and underground. So first and foremost, automation could be process automation, it could be machine automation, it could be data automation, and the piece that I think is missing here is how do we interconnect all of our mine sites together, and that's a focus of ours at the moment. If you look at underground mining, loader automation is the standard. Because we can't operate safely at a stope without loader operation, so that's a must-have. However, that same automation system may not be applicable to short-term stoping, for example, because the juice isn't worth the squeeze, right? Where your setup time will be greater than the time you're actually going to operate, for example. So there is a bit of a it depends answer when it comes to what position we're in. So from a machine automation piece, I think certainly we're in the game, but it's a very pragmatic approach. What we are focusing on, though, is how do we integrate all of these traditionally disparate systems into one to derive greater value. So our data systems, all of our wealth of information, 35 years plus of operations, all of the experienced people that we have in our business, how do we take all of that knowledge and bring them together to form value? That's really interesting and exciting, and no technology conversation today cannot start without the word AI, so I'll throw it in first. And so with the sort of the speed at which AI is coming at us, the reality is we're going to have insights faster than ever before. But importantly, how do we execute that at scale is something that I'm particularly interested in as well.
Great, thanks so much, Darren. Tara, probably interested in your different take on that in terms of where you sit at ContiTech, in terms of where you think, I guess, the industry and more broadly is it in the journey of automation?
I think, particularly if we look around total conveyance, we're seeing a lot more adoption of drones and robotics. Other than, we all talk about automation, automatically go to, the loaders, the trucks, etc. So I think drones and robotics are gaining pace on mine sites. And for me, automation means the data. It means to start integrating all these systems together. So that we can get consistent baseline data in order to do the predictive analytics, the real-time analytics that we require. So that's where we're seeing an adoption now. It's tentative, because obviously they don't want drones flying into their major arteries. But it's not new tech. It's been used a long time for stockpiles, etc. So now, we're seeing that adoption more and more, which is great to see. Particularly around the conveying side, because we want to get people away from those moving parts as quickly as possible.
Yeah, great point. Thanks so much. Same question to you, Cristian.
Yeah. Glencore, big company, right? So I can mention a few examples. We have bright spots across the value chain. So For instance, not far from here, in George Fisher, yesterday, the ops manager did a good presentation with one of our technology partners, Sandvik, around underground automation, so quite sophisticated implementation, removing people from the ground, semi-autonomous systems. And that's a really good bright spot not far away from Sydney, right? So that's one operations that I would like to highlight. In fixed asset, in Peru, we have AI, machine learning essentially driving advanced model predictive control in our concentrator. So quite sophisticated as well and very good value in that one. And in Congo, we also implemented AI software on top of our fleet management system. So really good bright spots that I can share. Automation is there, and we're not going away from it. It's just going to help the industry move along.
That's great. I might work backwards then and ask you the follow-up question that I'll ask to each of the panellists, which is, what are the critical enablers to realise the value that automation in all of its forms, to Darren's point, can deliver?
OT layers. So if you use IC95 standards, right, your operational technology layer, which is your instrumentation and sensors, they need to be top-notch. So before resolving that, and in mining sometimes, I have seen those bright spots, but I also see a lot of low lights as I go. There's operations that not prioritize calibration of their instrumentation, of their sensors, right? So that for me is a critical enabler, right? And as Tara mentioned, that's what you need to get the data from. So if you want to automate something and you want to get automated data acquisition, sensors needs to be there, the instrumentation needs to be there, and the connectivity as well. So OT layers, as you go up, they need to be there, otherwise you need to resolve and close those gaps. Yeah.
Great. Over to you, Tara. What do you think those critical enablers are?
Well, I think, firstly, I think technology is easy, yeah? And it's usually ahead of the curve of where we all are. I think the critical enablers that I see are data, the integration, and people, bringing the people along for the journey, and understanding why we're doing this. We're doing it for safety, we're doing it to gain the insights, to be more optimized and efficient. So yeah, those three, I think.
Great. Any further enablers for you, Darren, that we haven't shared?
Yeah, actually very similar to Tara's point. My team has a bit of a motto, and it should be tattooed on our chest when it comes to automation, which is people, process, technology in that order. Right? Technology will always fail, always, in my experience, if the people aren't behind it, if the process doesn't support it, and if the technology isn't practical to the job. So for us, if we follow the lines of ensuring that people are behind it, and we have various levels of success there, to be upfront, but if we don't have people behind it who are passionately championing it and see the benefits and want the system to work, the system will fail. And if the process doesn't drive that, I mean, there's a saying, rubbish process automated is just an automated rubbish process, right? So the reality is that we need to ensure that the process is rewritten and rethought because of the technology that's going to come behind it, as opposed to just slapping technology into an existing process. So I think for us, thinking in that lineage tends to lead us to a greater chance of success.
Yeah, fantastic. Fundamentals of enablers. I'm going to take a different tact with your next question, Brett, because you're at the launching pad. So I'm keen to understand the drivers for automation. What are they? Have they stayed consistent? Are they changing as you look at different types of automation?
Yeah, I think they have. I think the drivers that emerged for us, 5 years ago is not what I expected them to be now. I think we're facing a fundamental shift in the workforce expectations. I think the traditional FIFO models are becoming really increasingly harder to sell. People is now looking at, why do I need to fly to a remote site when the technology exists that lets me do that from my home city or hometown? So, automation creates roles that can be performed remotely from the operational control operators, data analysts, technology specialists, opening mining careers to people who couldn't or wouldn't work remotely before. So, yeah, I think the driver for automation is still there, but we're not automating to replace people. I think we're automating to attract the people we need for the future.
That's a bit of a mic drop statement there. Well done.
Yeah.
That's really great.
No.
Yeah, I do. And I'm going to come to you next, Darren, and I'll make my way down. A few of you have touched already on safety as a driver for automation. Keen to understand in your experience, given that you've got the people, process, technology in that order, but how does the safety piece resonate in decision makings at the executive level in contrast to the production or commercial decisions?
So I think this will be common amongst all of us. I'll be surprised if this is different. If there's a critical risk involved and there is a technology to engineer that out, it's a non-negotiable, we'll do it. That's reality. So I've already spoken about loader automation, for example, but removing people from the face and distancing them in underground, removing people from the face, the greatest distance we can have them away from the face, the safer our operation will be, and we will implement systems to do that. So when it comes to safety, it's a conversation about execution as opposed to whether we should. Let's be very clear about that. When it comes to the business case, a safe mine is a productive mine. So we also know that when we deliver a safe mine, it will 9 times out of 10 be one of our more productive operations too. So it's a twofold effect in terms of automation there. And then lastly, you want to recover any deltas that you find through automation. We know automation has benefits over time. It's about consistent outcomes as opposed to peak and troughs. Manual handling, manual control tends to give you far higher peaks in terms of performance, but it's unsustainable usually, and it usually cycles through. So automation brings us those plateaus and that consistency. And again, then it's understanding where the value of that consistency works within our operations. Again, I talk about the juice worth the squeeze. If you're only there for a couple of days and the effort to set up that automation is a couple of days, then let's find a really good operator to do the work, because we can then move on and use that experience. When it comes to sort of the digital aspects though, that's a whole new world for us. So systems integration, that's a free kick. So in terms of the business case and the driver for that, that's really around, okay, well, we have the data. How do we actually action insights at scale in our business, as opposed to saying we have a whole heap of data, we can learn from them, wonderful, but people have work to do every day, and sitting in front of a screen isn't usually part of it. So how do we turn the data into something actionable and insightful is usually the work that we focus on.
Great, thank you. That's wonderful. And that probably leads me to the question for Tara, which is, Darren started us talking about AI, so I'm going to ask you about the convergence of AI and machine learning as potential drivers for automation, as the application, and whether the industry has really started to realise the benefits in your experience in areas like productivity.
Crikey, that's a big question.
Well, I guess Darren was talking
okay.
about productivity then, in terms of, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
What's the decision making about productivity? And so if you could give us some context about how AI and machine learning underpins that.
Yeah. So where we're at now, we're going from a mechanical mine to an intelligent mine. But we're somewhere in the middle in no one's land. We know where we want to go, but we're not there yet. I mean, we can automate a lot of tasks, and we want to get to that AI predictive stage. And I see those benefits for AI and machine learning in the convergence, particularly around asset management, maintenance, the prevention of lost time, shutdowns, safety, and really having those, as Darren touched on, those those data-driven decisions, those insights. I think when we touch on where the benefits can lie, I think that will be when we can trust the data, when it is properly integrated. And I think then we'll have more of a chance, more of a grounding to gain traction with the intelligent mine. And because we need data, we need it more in order to get further along that track. I think, though, the integration at scale, again, is going to be a challenge in itself, and bringing all of the departments along for the ride. But I think if we look at it just on safety, and if you just take one scenario, we've had some in the last year, some lost time and tragic accidents with conveying. So if you take it another way and go, okay, you can't go near a moving conveyor anymore, full stop. How are you going to get the information to do a planned shutdown? So you need the automation, you need the data, you need to have it consistent and baselined in order to be able to make those insightful decisions to keep people away from the moving conveyor in the first place. So when we talk about safety, that becomes a driver very quickly to get that onboarding happening. So that's where I see the AI convergence.
Yeah, great. Thank you. That's wonderful. And Cristian, coming to you, I noticed that you nodded when Tara talked about bringing all departments along, and that leads me to the term that I was so glad I didn't trip over, which was organisational ambidexterity. What does that mean in your context in terms of for automation?
Yeah, so organizational ambidexterity is the ability of our organization or a business unit to be effective in today's business, but also look for new ways of doing things, right? And at least in Glencore, I think we are quite balanced in that space, in the means that we don't do it when it doesn't actually make sense, right? As you say, guys, it's a strong change management process going through an automation journey, and therefore, if it doesn't make sense and you still get the productivity that you want and there's no safety hazards, why are you going to do it? You're just going to do it for the sake of technology, or what's the reason behind? So exploring those ways of doing new things is good, but if you're effective today, then do it somewhere else, where you actually need to drive safety and productivity. So many organizations, they're fully focused on implementing tech, but sometimes you forget why you need to do it. So in that sense, I feel that you need to keep a balance. So in Glencore, we have a self-sustaining portfolio. So our first initial projects, they're essentially paying for the next project that need to come along. So that's how I think is a good way to keep accountability and keep people accountable to scale the implementations before jumping into the next project without their learnings or without the rationale.
Thank you. I think you just added another dimension to Darren's tattoo there in terms of the processes. I'm going to come to you now, Brett, and I want to ask probably like a real-time question, which is, what are the real-time benefits to automation? What have you seen in your experience? You've got fantastic experience that you bring to your role. What have you seen, the benefits that have been driven?
Yeah, look, I think here's what surprised me about automation. It is replacing jobs. We can't deny that. But it's also creating career pathways that didn't exist before. I've watched haul truck operators transfer into technology installers, operational technology positions. Suddenly there's a whole new career trajectory available that wasn't there before. Certainly when I started in the mining industry quite a number of years ago, you could be a truck driver or you could be a truck driver. Now there's a whole new career open to you. So I think the business case delivers, absolutely. It has to be a real benefit. But we're building a more diverse and more engaged and more technically adaptable workforce while we do it.
Good point. I've got some questions further on this point for the panellists, but Darren, I want to come to you and talk about the differentiation, if there is any, in your experience between the top tier contractor versus the asset owner in terms of the perspectives and the role that automation plays. Does it play a different role? You touched on the variety of sites and countries and commodities already. So, is there any different in automation in terms of how you approach it, how you implement it, compared to what you see asset operators doing?
Yeah, I mean, contracting, when you sort of look at it at face value, looks very similar to how an owner-operator would mine their site. We use the same machines, we do the same work, we turn big rocks into little rocks, then we move them, and you know, you could simplify our work to that point. I've always said that contract mining is there's a nuanced difference between what we do and what our clients do, but the nuance is a make or break. And the reason for that is, you know, as an owner-operator, and I've sort of been in that field in the past, you have the freedom to mandate. You can say across all of my mine sites, we will run with these systems because we have economy of scale, right? And that will drive benefits in terms of cost, in terms of effectiveness, in terms of skill sets. You can do those things. As a contractor, though, you know, the first path is to work collaboratively with our client. If it's a greenfield site, you can have a conversation about what technologies will work, what system integration you're going to do. There's clearly demand for information on both sides, from us as the contractor and from our client point of view too. So how we fulfill that need for information without getting in a tug of war between IT firewalls is another piece of conversation that we need to have. But that's in the best case scenario where it's a greenfield, it's a new client, and you can have that conversation, and usually those go quite well. However, if you come into a brownfield mine where there's existing technologies that may not be in the wheelhouse of any other sites that we operate, all of a sudden you've broken the process in which we can deliver that technology. So my team have to be very good at being dynamic. We have to understand the minimum standards of delivery because it is different from the majority of our mine sites. And so the skill set's different. There is no hum of activity in my team, right? It is a constant state of maneuvering in the dynamic nature of all of our mine sites. So there is a nuanced difference, even though it looks the same when you stare at the physical work that we do. And then the integration piece for us is also a pretty large challenge. One of my sort of mandates for the next year is I want to deliver the fastest integrating systems to our clients than any other contractor on earth, right? So I want to be able to plug in to our clients to deliver them the data that they need in weeks, not months, right? So how do we do that? How do we explore that? That's another piece that's nuanced and different to the work that we do as a contractor versus an owner-operator.
Great. Thanks for describing the nuance. I think that's really interesting. I've looked around a few times. I haven't seen any hands go up yet, folks, so you're on warning. I've got a question here for you, Tara, about is your role as a product manager, and with your industry experience and your technical experience, what are some of the roadblocks? We've talked about the enablers, but what are the roadblocks and barriers that the industry is currently facing to realise the value of automation?
I think the roadblocks are cultural, structural, and data governance. I think that the departments we have, departments that are siloed, they're fragmented. We have legacy systems. So I think that's really hard, as Darren touched on, to overcome in different sites. I think really from a leadership strategy perspective, there needs to be a change management piece. We need to bring the workforce on board as to why we're doing this, why we're putting this technology in, how it's going to keep them safe, how it's not going to lose them a job. It might be a different job, as Brett touched on, but that it's not going to impact as they think it is. We also need them to, with their experience, to check the data. So I see that all these are quite big roadblocks. But the other thing is operations. Operations are pushing that square wheel, and they've got to get the dirt from there to their customers, and that's it. They don't want to be bothered with this technology and that technology and etc. So while we have to bring them on board, we also have to let them do their job, and so that they're not distracted, so that we can switch the square wheel to the round wheel quickly, and off we go more efficiently. So I think it's, for me, so that roadblock to value is to have a real leadership strategy that aligns all your silos, and so we can get that vision of the tech adoption to value creation by integration and integrating all your data from all your departments, so you can get that whole mine value chain humming. That's where I want to live.
Great, thank you. I want to ask a similar question to you, Cristian, because of your experience in asset modernisation projects. Where do you think, based on Tara's comments, where do you think the industry sits in terms of its capability to realise the benefits? We've talked about the drivers, we've talked about the enablers, we've talked about the blockers, but where do you think we're sitting in terms of capability to realise the benefits of automation?
I think capability is shifting, right? And at least what I feel in the assets that we have in our first world countries, it's very hard to get people to go to the sites. Especially, for example, here in Australia, the new generations, they want to stay near to the ocean in the cities. They don't want to work in the outback, right?
Is that true? Is that true, students? They're all shaking their heads, Cristian.
Oh, okay. I'm wrong then. Should guys come to Glencore?
Cristian will talk to you afterwards.
The thing is, I found that the technical capabilities are there. We have, whether it's from your own organization or through partners, if you don't have the skills, you always can probably hire the skills or team up with your partners to implement and complement projects. So I think it's there, but I feel that to actually get the benefits, you need to do it in the right part of the value chain, right? So in all the assets that I see, we have constraints or bottlenecks in different parts. And therefore, based on theory of constraints, if you optimize a part of your value chain that is not your bottleneck or your current constraint, you're essentially not going to get free cash flow out of it. You're just going to get probably unitary cost reductions or risk avoidance, but not essentially free financials improvement. So aiming those projects into the right part of the process, because the value chain is very complex, right? It's start with exploration and goes all the way to the port. You need to really select and be careful in selecting where you're going to implement your automation project, and therefore realize the benefits, right? So capabilities there. We have young students. Mining is really great industry to work. We have all the toys, all the machines. There's a lot of data, but we need to integrate it. Part of the challenges. So this is actually very interesting to work in mining, and I feel that as an industry, we haven't been good at communicating that. All of this is mining, like screens, buildings, everything. Mine is everywhere, but people don't realize that, and sometimes they don't get interest. So I think we, as an industry, need to motivate the new generations to come. The skills are there, the talent is there, but we need to attract them.
Good point. I'm going to get on to workforce in a second. Just checking there's any hands. I see one down there at the back. Yep, let's go. Have we got a mic? Nicole? Thank you.
Hello. Hi. Jordan Letkeman with Normet. I think this is a little bit more to Darren, but I think, Cristian, you might be able to talk to this as
Sorry,
well.
we can't hear you very well. Just letting the AV know. Sorry, couldn't hear that at all.
No problem.
Thank you.
Jordan Letkeman with Normet. Kind of directed toward Darren, but I think Cristian might be able to talk about it as well, is, you're talking to many different sites, many different OEMs, all the different types of data. How do you try to get a baseline, and what do you think needs to change to make that work better in the future?
Did an OEM just handball me an ability to talk about interoperability between OEMs? Did that actually just happen? It would be really nice if OEMs would be interoperable. It would certainly make my team's job somewhat easier. I think we all value and respect IP, but there's a whole heap of standards out there that talk to ISO 95, for example, that talk to how we can traverse data across systems, right? And without getting deep into sort of, the world according to Darren, the reality is that the value that we derive from each one of our OEMs isn't realized in any scale if we can't bring them together, because mining is a closed cycle, right? So your machines at Normet will affect the Sandvik team's machines, will affect our infrastructure, will affect our people planning, will affect the mine plan. And so to bring them all together is actually where the value is. So the systems of systems, right? So I'm going to now call all of those things subsystems, because while we now, and if you talk about electrification, for example, you start talking about charging and moving electrons and where the batteries are, and all of a sudden you're talking about a master system, right? So how do we do that? It's literally the billion-dollar question. And quite frankly, I think a lot of the times the onus is put on us as the operator to make that happen. But the reality is that is just reverse engineering, right? So if I can ask nicely, if OEMs could, share information, share standards, make it interoperable, I think you'll find that automation and all of the sort of benefits that we've been talking about up here will J-curve. And so to answer your question, very important. I have an answer. I don't know how approachable it is for, I can see a whole heap of OEM folks scattered around the room. So if you want, I'm happy to sponsor a coffee straight after this to have this conversation further, but I certainly would like to push it forward.
Thank you.
Great question. Wonderful. Thanks, Darren. Back to you, Brett. I want to talk to you about, we've talked about the enablers, we've talked about the barriers, we've talked about some of the capability elements, but I want to ask you about the maturity curve. Where do you think your organisation, or even more broadly your observation across the companies you've worked in, where do you think it is in terms of the maturity cycle, in terms of automation, in delivering value?
Yeah, look, I think automation works. I mean, let me be clear about that. But I think here's the problem, is the OEMs have largely designed solutions for the big end of town. Large-scale operations, massive fleets, consistent routes, endless capital to invest in comprehensive systems. And I think that, that for mid-scale mines like PLS, with complex pit geometries and different operational requirements, the solutions just aren't there yet. So, where is automation in its maturity? At the big end of town, it's proven, but at our end, it's emerging, but slowly. The industry needs to broaden its focus beyond the top end, and if it's going to deliver value across the mining sector, it's got to start to deliver right across that whole sector.
Okay, great. To the OEMs in the audience.
Yeah, it was just another following on from Darren. I think it's,
Love it. Checking if there's any other questions from the audience. Tara, one for you, data governance. I know this is a passion of yours. Does it get the attention that it deserves? We've been talking about integration. We've been talking about lots of different elements of data. But what about data governance?
Yeah, we're getting there. But there's still a long way to go. We've got disparate siloed systems, we've got OEMs that won't talk to one another, we've got closed systems, open systems, nothing's integrated. And data's an asset. It's one of your biggest assets on the mine site, and yet it's given the least attention. So you're only as good as the data that you're putting into these systems and these integrations that you're doing. And at the moment, like I'm talking to people here, and we start talking about predictive analytics, and eyes are starting to glaze over, in that, yes, that we want to do that, but we're not getting the benefits, we're not seeing these results. Well, AI is very good at picking patterns, but if you're putting partly manual, ad hoc with some integration, and you don't have this third-party OEM's information here, and so we're just copying and pasting it to put it over there, no wonder you haven't got these predictive models humming. So, yeah, we're seeing that frustration, because AI is not a plug and play product, you know. So when we're talking again, it doesn't matter if it's OEMs, inter-departments, legacy systems. We have to get them all on the same page to a single source of truth, so that we can start moving from there. And I think the least intervention and from the disparate systems, the better, because I think that is also causing problems for the audit trail of your data. So it's key. It's your asset. Use it well.
Great. We've got 0 minutes left, but I just wanted to ask Cristian a quick question on the scale of an organisation like yours, the transformation that automation is bringing in terms of the workforces. What is the type of approach that you see Glencore taking or the industry taking in terms of the changing face of the workforce and upskilling and, Brett touched on it before, different career paths for people within the industry?
Yeah, I think as the industry is becoming increasingly relevant. So now with electrification, all the trades are going to change, right? So mechanics will need to understand electronics, battery technology, and so on. So I think it's evolving, but we need to own it better and push it harder, because I see those transitions happening, but not really because we are promoting them. It's just happening naturally, and then the operators are sort of learning new skills, and we have people that is motivated, but we need to own it and push it harder, So
yeah, great point. I'll just check if any panellists have anything else to add on that point. Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you for the question. That was wonderful. Thanks so much for being part of this panel. Some really interesting conversations traversing automation and where our industry's at. Please thank our panellists for sharing their expertise and time with us today. Thanks, everybody.